Awesome. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us today, Jennifer. This is the next interview of our CD7 Meet the Candidates series. I don't believe we had met yet, but my name is Nicole Hammer, and I'm the president of the Volusia Young Democrats. And then also on the call is Gavin, who is the vice president of the Volusia Young Democrats. And Rakeem is one of our members of the Volusia Young Democrats and an elected official with the West Volusia 4D board.
And I'm Haley Donahue. I am the president of the Young Dems of Seminole County. I believe we've met before. I'm trying to see who else is here. I don't think there is anyone else here yet from Seminole, but looking forward to people from Seminole showing.
Yeah. We've met, I believe, in on Zooms.
Mhm.
Um,
I also
so
was the MC at the Rainbow Dems Candidate Forum.
yep, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Awesome. So basically the goal of the call is just for people to be able to hear from all the candidates that are running in this race, and for us to be able to ask and um, for you to also receive questions from anyone that's able to join us live. Um, so Jennifer, if you would like to kick us off by just kind of telling us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for office.
Yeah, sure. Well, again, thank you very much for having me and for taking the time to put these on. I know that it takes a lot of time to do these things, so thank you for that. I'd say that without question, that this election and fight to defend democracy is about, securing a government that works for you and all of you, right? For our communities and for our neighbors and for our families, as well as all Americans, right? So we're standing up for the freedoms and the protections that we, hold dear, and we hold true. So with that said, there's so much being on the line with not just democracy, but reproductive freedom and economic opportunity, fair courts, quality, affordable healthcare, education, housing, the environment, and yeah, I could go on and on. And so I would say, though, on the flip side, and speaking with a lot of people, making a lot of phone calls, knocking on a lot of doors. There is a lot of enthusiasm, there's a lot of excitement, and there's a lot of energy, right, that is taking place since Kamala Harris was put forward. And so it's so great to have the younger groups engaged because it's really important. And I'm a mom. I have kids. They range, from elementary school up to high school and at home, and they're learning, and they're all different in how they engage. But it's really, really important to understand how policy impacts one's life. And so, why I even got into politics is as somebody who grew up here. Both my grandfathers served in the military, and I, was a Girl Scout. I played competitive sports, played in college. I did soccer. The My life was one way, and then when I got older, I went to University of Florida, graduated from there. I got married, and then I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and so when the courts didn't work to protect my kids and myself, and the process didn't work and wasn't just like I had read about and learned about, it was really frustrating. And one day, I had this aha moment, was, well, who is making the laws? And so that's when I became engaged and started advocating with the League of Women Voters, and then I led their statewide advocacy. And you know, the injustice that people can experience, and it can happen to anybody. So domestic violence happens to nearly 1 in 3 females, and 1 in 10 males. So it happens to a large chunk of our population. Yet it's something that people don't talk about enough, and it impacts so many things, right? It impacts our economy, our mental health, our ability to, have housing, substance abuse, and the generational cycle goes on and on. And so within advocating, it's something that I thought was really important to put at the forward of a platform, because nobody was listening to my kids when they were talking up about it. And so I led the statewide advocacy for the League of Women Voters, and then got and started up advocacy for court watching with in the state of Florida and beyond. And so within that, I helped write and get passed a law called Grayson's Law that was named after a 4-year-old little boy who I got to meet his mom and spoke at his memorial the first year after he'd passed. The mom tried to get a protective order, and even though she had a bunch of evidence, by the time she got it for stalking, wasn't even related to domestic violence. The father had already shot the little boy and himself. And so Grayson's Law was an opportunity to turn that pain into purpose and to help others. And so when I experienced that, I went back to school, because I knew that if I was going to be able to help fix a broken system, I needed to know how it worked. So I got a master's degree in policy, and then because I'm a total just love learning and just total nerd about learning and continuing to learn, is I got another one in legal studies, and then I became a Florida Supreme Court certified circuit court mediator. And so when I've gone through different political leadership institutes, and I've led and served on a lot of different government and nonprofit advisory boards, it became clear that the person that is representing us right now, Corey Maga Mills, is a really bad guy. And this is a flippable seat. It's one of the most flippable in the state. It just needs the right candidate. And having grown up here, having been able to work across the lines, having already been able to get a lot of things done that most electeds today haven't and aren't able to do, or aren't even willing to do, stepped up because we can win this seat, we can take it back, and we can make productive, positive change for today as well as the generations to come. And so that's why I stepped up to run. And so I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all, to earn your votes and support, and look forward to the questions that you have.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So you said a lot about policies and some pretty great ideas. What's the first thing you plan on doing in office?
Well, the first thing is to I really am a big advocate for the policies regarding caregiving and childcare, like the Paid Family Leave Act, and I think that that's some will go a long ways to help alleviate a lot of the pressures that a lot of working families and people that are caregivers for elderly parents or relatives, or perhaps siblings that may have disabilities. So that's something that I definitely would want to champion and help get across the finish line.
Awesome, thank you. So next question is, what do you see as the top priority for our district?
So, there are a lot of different things, right, that I think are important for the district. But having looked at and seeing the population, and it being the most educated congressional district in the state, I definitely think that making sure that we have quality education and that leading to jobs and job growth, I think is really important, because if people aren't economically stable and they're not able to pay their bills with the rising costs, right, then how a lot of this other stuff is not so important. So I really think helping with the economic growth, that will help alleviate a lot of different issues, right? That will help alleviate the affordable housing crisis. That'll help alleviate a lot of the rising costs and being able to afford goods, being able to afford an education, or if you don't want to go to education, have the opportunity to go and get work skill classes. So I really think having supporting small businesses and economic growth is really important, because that's something right now that our current person supposed to be representing us in Congress is not doing. I'm sure living in the state would be a helpful thing, but definitely think that the economy is really important to get people started off strong and be able to continue to scale and grow as they please. And everybody should be able to do that in a manner that is equitable. And right now we don't have that.
All right, thank you so much. How do you plan to involve young people like ourselves during your congressional term?
Yeah, well, I'm a big proponent of doing community engagement, and so I think Zoom is a great thing. I think in person is good too. I think hybrid is great. But I think that it's important to listen to constituents. And so I would hold something that I started when I was with the league, called like office hours. And I'm an adjunct professor at UCF, so I'm used to doing that. And so I think that that's a good time, that it could be something that was regular, and that could give an opportunity for the constituents to be able to connect. And they could, in Zoom, people can do that from anywhere, right? So I think it would make things a lot more equitable for people to have a voice within the and to their representative.
Awesome. Thank you. So one of the questions that we've been asking is, a good leader is someone that is a good manager. In your congressional office, how would you ensure that staff in your administration are treated fairly treated and compensated?
Right. Well, obviously there are different laws that go along with that. But I will say, for the most part, staff usually ends up, especially on the state level, not getting paid very much, right? And so, I think making sure, I'm a big proponent. Another law that I think is really important is having transparency in what wages are and what jobs, what they offer. So I definitely think that looking at what the market is, looking at what is a fair wage, and having a rubric. If I'm talking from the educator side, to make sure that there are metrics that are involved, right, within that, and knowing what holes there are that need to be filled, right, within the office, and within the staff. So making sure that it's a diverse group, but it's a diverse group within a lot of different things, right? Not just like what we see in the census, right? But that would be a way that I would go about approaching that. Approach a lot of different things, but that would be as an overarching example.
Awesome. Sorry, my laptop is taking a second. Since you mentioned being an educator, I assume I know the answer to this, but will you fight for better working conditions and raises for teachers? If so, how?
Yeah, no, absolutely. My mom was an educator. She comes from a family of educators, and I think one of the ways is kind of what I was just talking about within the fair wage transparency. in terms of like, what is it that others are getting paid. And I also think that, the pay for teachers is a state issue primarily, but I do think by passing laws that have to do with how people are paid in general, and making sure that there's transparency and that there are certain standards, I think for sure, making sure that we raise the federal minimum wage, I think is another. And I think making sure that we have a cost of living index that everything is appreciating for, whether that's benefits, right? That people are getting Social Security, that people are getting, so that it's reaching everybody, especially educators.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my next question would be, it's kind of personal to me, but how will you work to protect and enshrine the rights of LGBTQ citizens?
Yeah, so another law that I'm a big proponent for, and that needs to be put into our U.S. Constitution, is the Equal Rights Amendment. And so, that's one way that can help, I think, solve a lot of the legality issues, right? In terms of not being able to discriminate, and making sure that we're equally protecting people regardless of their, gender or sex. And so that's why, so that would protect, like, I think people should be able to love who they want to love. The government shouldn't be involved in that, as well as with reproductive freedom and abortion. That's another, thing that politicians should not be legislating. That's something, between a person and their family and their doctors, providers, and whoever else that they want to have be involved in that. So I think the Equal Rights Amendment is something that would help to secure that in our U.S. Constitution. And since we're one of the only democracies in the world that does not have that, I definitely would put a push and continue to put a push for that, because if we're going to have a true democracy, we need to make sure that all Americans are treated equally.
Cool. And then this is a question from one of the young STEM Dems members, our secretary, who cannot be here tonight. He is at the West Volusia Hobnob. But can you list some comparative strengths that your primary opponents have? And sorry, trying to pull this up. And how do you think that you compare to them? And how would you as an advantage?
So can you read me the question like in one? Can you read it to me again?
Yeah, sorry, it was sent to me over texts, and it's on
Gotcha,
my end
yeah.
for not being able to decipher it sooner. I had not read it completely.
No worries.
Can you tell me some comparative strengths about your primary opponents and explain how you also have those strengths and what you do as well?
Sure. Thanks for reading that again. So, I think that they definitely obviously seem passionate about issues. And I certainly am passionate about issues. I think the differentiator, though, is that, I've stepped up and gone beyond that. I've stepped up and served on a lot of different advisory boards. I've led already advocacy for different groups, whether it's local, state, national, and I understand and have worked with legislators and helped write legislation, have helped and been involved in the process, and also having grown up here and living in the district, have seen things that have worked well, and have seen opportunities, let's say, for vast improvement. So I think, for those reasons, as well as, it's indicative of what recent, polls show, is that, I'm within the margin of error to beat the incumbent. So, it's great to have a lot of passionate people, but you also, need to have people who know how to lead and can win in order to be able to affect change.
Cool. And then now we're going to take some questions from the audience. I know, Gavin, you had mentioned having another question earlier.
Yeah, of course. I'll go for it now then. So if you are selected as the nominee in the primary, what is your plan for voter outreach in Volusia County?
Yeah, thanks. So, voter outreach being, going to a lot of the local events, meeting people where they're at. Really, we're kicking off a really strong ground game and targeting the voters by looking at data. So there's a strategy there for sure, and having conversations with the independents and Republicans, because you can't win this race in a general if you don't get the support of people in both of those voting blocks.
Yeah, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Jennifer?
I have one. Um, what are some of your environmental priorities for this office?
Yeah, thanks. So, I was an observer with the League of Women Voters US for the COPE conference, this last one, and the it's hard to get people in a community on board with things, let alone the world. But for the first time ever, we did agree on language in terms of clean energy, right, and against fossil fuels. And so I think number one is that we need to be all on like the same page, right? Like, what are the standards, right? What are we measuring? Because having served on different local advisory boards, I know that not even our own cities within counties are on the same wavelength when it comes to looking at the quality of like water, for instance, right? And so I really think that's something that should happen, and that should happen at the federal level, right? So that everybody kind of is on those metrics and is all looking at the same thing. So that's one for sure. And then I think looking at making sure that we bring dollars down to help upgrade our infrastructure, right? Because flooding is such a major problem and issue. And so I think, making sure that our water is able to flow in and flow out, right? I think that's really important. And then being proactive in helping to mitigate against the beach erosion and things like that. And so I think, having different mini goals within the bigger goal, right? To have clean energy, less carbon output, and having a hybrid of ways to go about doing that. Going to all or nothing of anything doesn't usually ever work very well. So I really think having those those goals to hit, and making sure that they are, and then putting the proportion of whatever damage is done to the environment proportionally onto those businesses or groups that are causing the harm, then hopefully then that will help correct that bad behavior to then everybody can start aligning. But usually you got to get people to change their behaviors first. So I think also educating the voters more and doing a better job of that, and making having that maybe come out on the federal level, but then connect with like the local soil and water commissions, so that there's a local voice that is also being a part of this process.
Awesome. Um, and then I don't know if anyone else had any questions.
Oh, I have a question.
Right.
Yes. Um, in a perfect world, we understand that committee assignments in Congress are very vital and it depends on a lot of variables and factors. However, in a perfect world, if you could pick your own committee, what committee would you pick and why?
Yeah, that's a good question. And Haley asked me that at the Rainbow Simnums. I think it's a good question. So I would love to be on judiciary. I think that would be a great one that likely will not happen as a freshman. However, another one that I think is some great opportunities is, there's the committees that are like small businesses and innovation and things like that. Because within that, there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to make great change. And so while they may not be like the sexy committees, they are very important. And so, being able to make progress is a lot easier sometimes when you don't have all the cameras on you, right? And being able to do things behind the scenes. So, judiciary would definitely be one that I would definitely want to be on. Rules would be another one I'd love to be on. So I guess those would be goals within goals, right?
Awesome. Does anyone have any other questions for Jennifer?
Uh, let me follow up. In regards to the current rep and his accessibility, if elected to his position, how would you ensure to be accessible to your district?
Yeah, good question. So, living in the district is important, right? Living in the state is important. So I think that right there, I talked about doing the Zoom. I think that's important too. And then, I do think having regular town halls is good, just, to give updates, as well as hear from constituents about, what's going on. So, I think kind of blending the old school with the new school, like in terms of old school like town halls, but also offering it virtual as well. I think would be two ways that I would go about doing that for sure, because people want to talk and speak, and I also think that members of Congress should hear so that they're speaking intelligently when they're up in committees as to what's going on in their district.
Awesome. And then I think a question that I had is with the recent hurricanes, a lot of insurance companies have moved away from Florida. What are some of your plans to kind of help reconcile um, those kinds of difficulties for homeowners?
Yeah, well, the way that things are currently structured, right? That is more of a state issue as well, right? But I do think that there should be more regulation on the insurance companies as a like antitrust measure. So I definitely think you know doing an audit of those companies, because they do have monopolies. We know this, right? In Florida for sure. So I think that being able to have Congress kind of do an audit of like the major insurance companies, and because certainly a state can't be having the majority of insurance and homeowners as their clients. That just doesn't make sense, right? So in that sense, it is of a national interest, because if the state goes bankrupt and fails, right, then who's going to come and help them out, right? It's going to be the federal government. So I think those would be one way. And I also think that the federal level representative should be able to engage and have conversations with state and locals, right? I think that that's really important. They don't have to agree on things, right? But they should be able to have conversations and find common ground on a lot of main core issues. So I think that's another way, is really having those lines of communication open, right? So that because the goal of everything is to help the constituents, it's to help the people that live in the district, and definitely not somebody that's running for office like, you know, that Trump, right? So I really think that I think that those things would be really important and would be really helpful and kind of get back to having a champion, and that's part of a team, to help the people that they were all elected to represent.
Awesome. Thank you. Is there any other questions that you guys had for Jennifer? Okay. Seeing none. Um, Jennifer, is there anything else that you think that voters should know about your campaign?
Yeah, well, I think you guys did a great job with your questions, and I think that the work that you're doing is really important and much needed. So I appreciate all of you very much and your questions. Look, as a mom, a mediator, a survivor of domestic violence, I know what it feels like to be without a voice. I know what injustice feels like. You know, I had a judge order me to jail because my teenage son was running away from his abusive father. Um, I didn't back down. I wouldn't back down. And so I think knowing that you have somebody that who cares, who is compassionate, who is also collaborative, and who's like a champion for positive change is something that is sorely needed more of in Congress. And so I'm not somebody who is going to shy away from a big bully or a little bully or what a medium-sized bully or whatever size you want to put in for the incumbent. But I think having an advocate for somebody who really can affect change, somebody who cares to affect change, and somebody who is going to do that for everybody, and is not for performative politics, but really for just helping to make a difference. That was always what I wanted to do when I grew up. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I just honestly, I just want to make the world a better place. You know, I think it comes from that Coca-Cola song that was really big when I was growing up. So you know, I would say, you know, having done a lot of work with other legislators across the aisle with both parties, and with NPAs, I've gotten endorsements from Republicans and Democrats, from current members of Congress, former members of Congress, as well as state senators, former state senators, reps, and other community leaders. You know, the Sentinel endorsed me recently, as well as Mayor Demings, and as well as I have the support of a retired U.S. General, Mark Hertling. And so, you know, that I think that says a lot about who I am and why I'm doing this. And so I would ask you all to join me in this journey, to win and to make a difference for you and for our futures. So you can go to jenniferadamsforcongress.com to learn more, to donate, to volunteer, and I really appreciate the opportunity to earn your votes and support. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. For anyone that is watching from home, please also join us tomorrow, where we will have our last Meet the Candidate interview with Tatiana Fernandez. Thank you again, Jennifer, for joining us today. Don't forget that Election Day is happening from now, if you already have a vote by mail ballot, all the way until August 20th. All right, good night.